Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, we've got Ty Lee. And Ty, Oklahoma wins their second game of the season in a way I don't think we really saw coming. I think before we might have thought this would be a shootout, but instead, OU wins a pretty gritty, interesting 28-11 game against the SMU Mustangs. This one's a weird one because it's not an overall, 100% good, 100% bad game. There's a lot to talk about across the board, on the field. I would say off the field, but what happened off the field happened on the field, technically. We'll get to all of that later, but we want to see your comments and all of that. And if you're watching with us live, first of all, thank you for picking us over the Dallas Cowboys. Unless you hate watching the Dallas Cowboys, in which case you're welcome, because now you don't have to watch the Cowboys.
If you hate the Cowboys, that's bad news. All I know is my phone is blowing up with Boat and Blake right now, screaming about the Cowboys having done something good. So, good news for the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, I just saw that text too. That's something very good happened to the Cowboys, no doubt. But if you're watching with us live, make sure to hit us with a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. It will help our show grow. So would very much love that. And if you're listening on podcast, hey, thanks for joining us. And give us a review if you like the show. All right, Ty, let's go ahead and get into we got through all the standard, kind of podcast intro theatrics. But what are your thoughts on the game just as a whole? We'll dive into the specifics with defense and offense, but what was your impression of the game a day later?
Yeah, a day later, I almost have just an even more confused, stranger feeling about it. I feel like it just depends on your perspective. I mean, a win is a win. As of the line that we picked on Wednesday on the weekend spread, it was a cover, depending on, if you were looking at the lines. We covered, didn't cover, depending on what time of the week you looked at it. But it was a sloppy performance. But at the same time, on both sides of the ball, if you look at certain moments, we performed really, really well. I was very confused. I felt like at certain points of the game, offensively, I saw the team that I was expecting to see. Defensively, I felt like I saw the team that I was expecting to see. But there was some very questionable moments, especially on the secondary, just missed coverages. There were some very sloppy, inexcusable penalties on both sides of the ball for us. And although we held them to 11 points, they got almost 400 yards of offense. So, yeah, this one, not what we expected. But again, a win is a win. And hopefully, like we saw in this game, we can do better. We saw moments where we were much, much better than we were most of the rest of the game. Hopefully, we see that much better team as we roll through the season, because this performance for 3/4 of this game is not going to do well, even against our pretty easy schedule rolling into Big 12 play.
Yeah, to me, it depends on what side of the ball you want to really look at. Offensively, it was more of the same from what we saw last year. Inconsistent play calling and just kind of bland offense. Definitely not what you were used to. And you can debate whether or not that's just an OU thing because of the offenses we've seen in the past, especially the past 20 years here at OU. But also defensively, the amount of strides are remarkable. This was a team that looked a lot better than it did last year. There were a lot of little coverage breaks, but it was really one of those bend don't break situations where, they weren't giving up massive plays at times. There were a couple here and there, but when it came down to it, when it came to the red zone, when it came to cracking down on making sure SMU didn't score, OU responded well. So there's a lot of positives there. SMU, as we mentioned in our preview, offensively, very, very, very solid, very good. Not too far off from a lot of the Big 12 offenses that OU is going to run into this year. So yeah, there's a lot of good here. And let's go ahead and just kind of dive into the defense a little bit as we get started. And
as we dive into the defense, really, adjust the hat 7 in the comments mentioned a perfect thing. SMU's quarterback, Stone, he had a great game. He's a really, really solid quarterback. Spent a year learning under Tanner Mordecai there at SMU. And yeah, like Bobby just said, this SMU team really could maybe win out the rest of their schedule. The other team always has a vote in your games, and especially as we roll into looking at this OU defense, I don't think it's at all a cop-out to say this SMU team was very, very good. And if you look at a lot of people's pregame expectations, I said maybe we could have got a shutout in this one. Maybe that was a little optimistic seeing our performance now. I think we got out kind of lucky holding them to 11. But yeah, this was an SMU team that most people expected to put up at least a couple touchdowns on OU. So that bend don't break. Obviously, they strung together some good drives, but we did have a defense that really tightened up when it mattered and created some awesome turnovers as well when it mattered.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start with, as we kind of dive into the defense, as you can see from our little stat, if you look at the raw numbers, 367 yards of total offense, not exactly that impressive. If you look at OU's offense, actually pretty similar to our offensive statistical input, but that, 11 points is pretty strong. Only 2 scoring occasions, and I believe they didn't score a touchdown until the third quarter, which means that third or fourth, I can't remember, but
it may have been super early in the fourth.
Yeah,
but it was definitely late.
That would make sense because the stat in OU's game notes was the last time that OU held their opponents to no touchdowns, the amount of the last time they took 7 quarters, the opposition took 7 quarters to score a touchdown was 1999. So that's pretty impressive, I will say. And I think to me, the guy who, and we usually do game balls and wait for a while, but this guy won the game. He kind of won the nation's game ball of the week. Danny Stutzman against SMU, unbelievable. The linebacker out of just nuts. 17 total tackles, 5 solo, 1 sack, 2.5 tackles for loss, and he got the Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week award. Offensively, it was Quinn Ewers, so a little OU Texas split there. But Stutzman all over the place as the captain of the defense, just completely incredible force for the Sooners.
Yeah, he had quite the game. It was super exciting to see. At moments, he was out there. I almost feel like at moments it wasn't super flashy. At moments, you'd look down and we'd have just sort of an SMU drive, and then we'd get him off the field, and then you would notice oh wow, that defensive drive was almost entirely Danny Stutzman making the difference. It almost reminded me of one of those super classic Kenneth Murray games where he just really stepped up and carried the entire defense as a linebacker. So I think that's a tremendous compliment, especially when it comes to an OU defensive player in recent times, to really be putting up a performance that's similar to that. And then, 3-4 plays, depending on how you look at it, for loss as well, is super awesome.
Absolutely. Because he I don't want to say he put the defense on his back quite really, but he drove it for sure. He was the driving force 1000%. And really that whole linebacking core was really solid. I thought Jaron Kanak had a couple really big plays, but of course we'd be remiss not to talk about Kip Lewis, the freshman. Incredible performance as well. 9 total tackles, 4 solo. The guy was completely all over the field. I believe I think Venables referred to him as a ball hawk, and as a freshman to be that aggressive, that exciting, man, that has to be just thrilling as an OU fan. That is thrilling to watch. That is exciting to see. Early year impact players makes you feel like you can change things in a hurry. And Kip Lewis, to me, that guy put a stamp on the defense last night.
Yeah, you bring up Kip Lewis, a couple other guys as well. It really feels like with this defense, and not to get too optimistic or too eager with this, but it really feels like it feels like defensively, almost like you're trying to solve a puzzle. And in our second attempt at solving the puzzle, we've thrown out the pieces, and we already know where they're going to go. Right? This wasn't the end all be all of this defense. I think this defense will improve, and I think we saw a lot of issues with this defense in this game. But I think it's very apparent what those issues are, And we saw so many key players begin to emerge that as that defensive stew starts to cook a little bit and the flavors mix together a little bit better, it's going to be a really delicious dish. I've just done a double comparison of something there. We went from puzzles to stew.
You don't mix them together, but I as we get into the fall season, it's kind of getting to soup season. That seems nice. So do a puzzle while the stew on the counter. That just sounds like a really good fall evening to me. So I'm all about it. But no, yeah. I gotta say, defensively, the linebacker back and crew just gold star, incredible work. Let's talk a little bit more about the defense. I actually really liked the performance of the secondary. I know they had some pretty big plays given up, but I feel like in a way some of it was by design to kind of bend a little bit. I thought Key Lawrence was great with seven total tackles, 6 solos. He had that awesome strip that caused that fumble. Same with Woody Washington, 6 total tackles, 4 solo. I thought those two guys who we've seen a lot of over the years, both played very, very well.
Yeah. So on the strip, right, I think there should be a little annotation to go see the footnotes. That was like a 20+ yard play on basically blown coverage that we got very, very lucky at the end on that standard, try to punch it out as you tackle them. And then I think Danny Stutzman dove on it. So we did get lucky there. That one was one of those, okay, it worked this time, but ideally we're never going to be in that position again. But yeah, I think defensively, creating 2 turnovers is super tremendous. And then again, like we've touched on, that bend but don't break. This defense, if you look at the time of possession, SMU was able to string together some decent drives. SMU beat us on time of possession, I think, by like 6 minutes. Some of that also was we were putting together a lot of 3 and outs at certain moments, like just classic, like boom, real quick 3 and outs, and then immediately giving the ball back to them. But yeah, I think bend but don't break is a really good example when it mattered, when it came down to whether or not SMU was going to be able to put points on the board. Our defense closed up and held them. Because if you look at the stats, we had 22 first downs, they had 21, and then I think they actually beat us in total yardage by like 2 yards, something less than 5. But if you look at most of the offensive stats, just as a team, they were pretty in step with us. But then when it mattered, we were able to lock it down and make sure that they didn't convert to points. And ultimately, who is it? The Iowa coach friends will always say like offensive yardage is the most overrated stat or something like that. Like, don't count towards winning the game. Yeah, they let them put up 700 yards on us. If they don't convert any one of them into a point, that's fine. We'll still win. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. That, like you said, or like one of the parents has said, I'm about it, because again, if they don't score, you don't get an extra point for having more yards. This isn't the Hogwarts like cup or whatever, where you just make arbitrary rules out of nowhere. Scoring points, that's what matters. You did a good job of keeping them out. So more just exciting stuff, to say the least. Let's talk a little bit about, I never really know where to put the cheetah position. But I gotta say, a guy who popped in, played a little bit of cheetah, played a little bit of secondary, but made an impact all the way around. Our guy Peyton Bowen, 5-star out of Den Geyer, 4 total tackles, 1 solo, but he had some crucial plays. Most notably that massive punt block in the first quarter, just coming out of nowhere. Apparently he wasn't even supposed to rush. He just had the instinct and went at it, which is incredible. I love that. Just Leroy Jenkins the thing. And then he had a massive pass deflect towards the end of the game that, I believe caused SMU to go 4 and out. So Ty, let's start with that special teams play from Bowen. What are your thoughts on that? And just what an incredible play.
Yeah, well, first off, before I forget, when you start to talk about an OU secondary player, OU safety, who just has that instinct and goes for it, immediately I'm thinking of Roy Williams and the Superman play. So that's super, super good. Just one of those little think way back and you hear about that. But such a weird tangent. Yeah, no, tremendous play. I think he was, if I remember correctly, one of the only a couple players that in Venables' post-game press conference, Venables himself brought up and spoke about for a few minutes unprompted without anyone asking about it. I think there were some follow-on questions about him, but one of the handful of players that Venables brought up on his own talked about, a young guy. And again, going back to we found the ingredients for the stew, and the ingredients maybe not or might not be mixed together perfectly right now, but we found a really, really solid ingredient here with this defensive stew that we're cooking up. And yeah, Bowen, again, seeing all those instincts and then taking those instincts and just that ability to play, that athleticism and that ability that's so crucial for someone in his position, especially to just inherently understand where you need to put yourself, because it's all about the angles. It's all about just being in the right place at the right time. And that doesn't necessarily matter, or you don't have as much control over that if you're on the D line or if you're a linebacker. But when you're starting farther back like he is, or having the ability to move all over the field, it really matters that you know ball and you have that understanding of where to put yourself. And then from there, coaching and learning at this level from experience really refines that and creates a dangerous player for opposing teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And, as our, colleague Jameson mentions all the time, he's a guy who's so good, you have to have him on the field at all. Like just wherever he can fit, put him on there, make it work because of because like you're saying, those instincts are so good that, and that talent, that skill, that is so good. You just cannot put him on the bench. And he showed to be an absolutely invaluable player on Saturday. Look, we've been singing the praises of this defense, but let's kind of pivot a little bit, maybe to a little bit of critiques. I kind of think the weakest point might have been the defensive line. I feel like they didn't have a ton of pressure in terms of really pushing SMU's line off ball. They seemed a little, they were getting after Stone, but they weren't able to just get that last little push to, get sacks, to make actual, they were in the backfield getting pressure, but they weren't quite doing it as much as they should have. I feel like, just given that it's SMU, probably not exactly a very big line. But I will say, Rondell Bothroyd, pretty solid game with four tackles and one solo. Overall, just kind of a pedestrian performance from the D line.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I think, not to constantly we always get into this, but scheme does have something to do with it. SMU had 117 yards on the ground, but I really felt like they were never really able to establish a super credible run threat, especially not in between the tackles, which is always good because you want a team to be able to just, grind out 5-6 yards on inside run plays. SMU certainly was unable to do that. And I just felt like we really contained them. I mean, you look at most of SMU's yardage, if you really look back at it, was sort of blown coverage or maybe just schematic caused. SMU has, I think, a fairly decent offensive line. Again, we'll see that as their season develops, but I think their offensive line might be something that is being slept on. So I'm not 100% out on the D line at this moment, but yeah, I think you could point them out. Obviously, it's a less flashy position. Maybe you could point them out as we expected a little bit more, especially against a team like SMU. But, sometimes this early in the season, you can't really tell.
That's fair. I would agree with that. But any other points that we might not have talked about? I guess so. I totally forgot about Justin Harrington, the other cheetah there. He had a pretty solid game as well. 4 tackles overall, 1 solo, and a interception as well. So he had a hell of a game and great instincts on his end to go down instead of trying to run it in for a touchdown. I got to say, by the way.
Yeah, and I think another thing, just as we sort of wrap up on the defense, I know we harped on a couple different position groups. I think this is both a good and a bad thing, but I don't know that you could say, especially from this performance and then encompassing the entire year to date, so that obviously only 2 games, I don't know that you can point to one player and say this guy is a serious liability or a serious problem. And I don't know that we've had that, developing week 2 in years past, but I think we would maybe see a little bit more symptoms. Yeah, there was some mistakes here and there. There was some blown stuff here and there, but I don't feel like, and this is kind of going off vibes here a bit, that there was one specific guy that was just constantly getting burned. And sometimes those little mistakes will happen, especially early in the season. And maybe it's a bad thing if across the board we have little mistakes here and there. But I think generally it's a good thing because you can, refine those. And as of now, we're not seeing anyone that's a super weak link in the chain that other teams can really exploit. People have their little lapses in judgment here and there, missed assignments. Maybe we need to go back and study the playbooks a bit more, study tape a bit more as a team. But I think it's a good thing when you can't necessarily point out like, oh, this guy or this, pair of guys or these three guys are all liabilities. I feel like everyone is not where they need to be, but in a very good spot for week 2.
I'm with you. There were no liabilities. Everyone was really standard, really solid. You saw a couple plays where SMU tried to run a couple, gimmick little gadget plays. OU snuffed them out really, really well. And they were very composed, very reactionary, but not overreactionary. They just filled the gaps well. That one in the round, it was exactly what you want to see. And I feel like one of the things that Venables mentioned in his press conference after the game is he didn't think that this team would have won, or last year's team would have won this game in that situation. They might have panicked. They might have made mistakes. They might not have made the plays that they needed to make to win. I feel like OU did that in this game, especially on the defensive end, and we'll get to the offense as well. I think they did, pretty well on that as well. But no, across the board, just solid, consistent play. Absolutely loved it. There was a stretch with a lot of penalties. You can talk about the officiating all you want, but let's be honest. Like you got to tighten some of that up. Ethan Downs had a pretty brutal face mask, a couple PIs that, kind of killed a little bit of momentum there, which sucked. But look, let's be honest, we're in the Big 12. It's gonna get worse from here, probably.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think Venables said something of the like when it came to those penalties is whether they're fair or not, you can't even give them the leeway. It's something you got to understand, especially as a team that we know from the Big 12 commissioner himself. We have targets on our backs, not necessarily that they're going to incentivize making no calls or calling things against us. I think they might, in fact, be a little bit stricter against us than they were or will be against other teams. The infamous holding calls against OU and Texas last year, one each is, of course, comes to mind. But yeah, you got to watch out. I think there were some pass coverages that I thought maybe we got away with some stuff in this game as well. I don't think it would have won or lost us the game either way, but yeah, I don't know. You can't really put yourself in that position. I did feel, this is a strange tangent, but watching all the games on TV yesterday, I did feel like this season, just college football as a whole, people were getting away with guarding people that maybe they wouldn't in years past. Maybe it's early in the season. Maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe it's all a conspiracy because I think the refs are out to get OU.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Okay, let's move to game balls. Ty, I'll let you start us off here. Who are you giving your game ball to?
I mean, it's got to be Danny Stutzman, right? Defensively, just super solid leader on the defense. Made plays when it mattered. Didn't create a turnover, but got a turnover. But knocking the ball loose is one thing, but somebody has to come up with it. So that's super important. And then, yeah, again, anytime you're creating 4 plays for lost yardage, that's really tremendous. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that is really a lot.
I mean, yeah, you're totally right. Just a massive game-changing player for sure. And look, it's Stutzman, but to make things different, I'm going to give the more hey, this surprised me. Good job. Award, which is not quite a game ball. It's like one of those little mini foam balls that you get for free, like the little credit unions hand out, at the tailgates outside of the games. That type of game ball, I'm going to give it to Kip Lewis. I thought he had a great performance as a freshman, very bold, very strong, great effort, and I think that we're going to see a lot of this guy in this season. just playing regular games if he continues this type of effort. So shout out Kip Lewis. That's my tiny foam football game ball of the week. Real game ball goes to Stutzman, though. That just an undeniable performance.
And I would really like to see some big plays from Kip Lewis, especially. I feel like a name that as a whole, like just a Kip, like a 3-syllable name, just very, very good for like super cool calls too from playcasters. So, I'm excited. I want to hear a big Gus Johnson just come up with a random nickname for him like he does that sticks. Like, I don't know. I can't do it like Gus can. I'm not even going to come up with suggestions. I was going to say like Kip the Skip or something. I don't know. So
Kill a Kip. I don't know. Maybe that's probably too redundant. People have. I don't know. We'll see. We'll work
Gus will do it. Gus will do it.
Let Gus work. Let Gus cook. We don't know nothing about that. So gotta let Hollywood Brown didn't even have that nickname until Gus gave him that. And like that's how good Gus is. Let Gus cook. So all right, let's pivot on to the offense. A much grumpier segment of the show, to say the least. And look, I was probably too hard on the offensive play calling. Just the offense as a whole yesterday in the stands. I think the fans probably were a little bit. They booed at one point in the third quarter, even though we were winning, which is a lot. But it's Oklahoma. That's the standard. But overall, once you look at the whole body of the game, they figured it out at the end. 4 touchdowns, 365 yards, 0 turnovers. And then they were pretty solid on third and fourth downs, 9 for 18 on those, which is something that is an absolute improvement over last year, which that was not good at all. So look, we're going to talk about the Lebby thing, but I kind of want we kind of want to get into the players first, because that was crap. We'll talk about the play calling. It was crap at times. But I'm not going to let that overshadow this game. That's not worthy of it. So let's dive into it. Get right to our quarterback here. Dylan Gabriel against SMU threw for all 4 touchdowns, 176 yards through the air, 19 for 27 completions per and attempts. And then he had a 71.4 QBR. And then in addition to that, he was the highest rated Sooner in PFF's rankings. So overall, I don't think issues with the offense fell on Gabriel. He wasn't, I don't think he was like atrocious bad, or I don't think he was even bad. He was just kind of Dylan Gabriel. It was a standard Gabriel game. He did what he needed to do. I think a lot of the issues kind of came from some drops, I mean, you and I both played football at very small, lower levels than obviously college, but that when the ball goes in your hands, you have to catch it. And I don't think that's on Gabriel's. I don't think that's on Gabriel's ledger.
Yeah, I don't know, Bobby. I think on your end, I think Heritage Hall Middle School football maybe could have beat last year's OU team. So don't be down on yourself too much. But yeah, I think here's how I'm thinking about Gabriel. I'm not saying everyone has. Would never. Oh, you should think this way. I'm an expert. I'm on a podcast, but I've been thinking about Gabriel in a manner that's really helped me understand and just come to peace with this. And what I have been doing this season is I'm just comparing him to last year. And when I look at last year's Gabriel and this year, he is better. I think he's noticeably better. I'm not really expecting to see a whole lot more out of him when it comes to accuracy and range and power. I think he's fully developed in those areas. Is there something to be desired in all of those? I think yes, but I think you're beating a dead horse at this point saying he needs to get more accurate. It's not going to happen. He's fully developed there. I still feel like in this game, his decision-making, looking at it in terms of amount of time it took for him to make a decision and then amount of times he made what you can look back in hindsight and say was the right decision for that play, I think it's significantly better than last year. He's making decisions faster. He's making decisions at all, which was an issue sometimes last year. He's going through, everything else. I think a lot of the Gabriel issues, I think we've seen that a healthy Drake Stoops is very, very crucial to this OU passing game. And then he just doesn't have a rhythm developed with his guys yet. He doesn't have, that timing. He was throwing to a lot of people he's never thrown to before, even in this game. And it's just really, we're trying to find out, especially with Stoops, who played, but clearly was not 100%, find someone who can really step in as that RB2. Even if Stoops is not going to be 100%, I think Stoops is RB1. You need that RB2. Gavin Freeman, I think a lot of people thought he had a bad game. I thought he had a fairly Gavin Freeman game. If you look back at him, he's always played kind of how he is. And I think when I look at Gabriel, because we'll get into the receivers a little bit more in depth, I'm just seeing a quarterback who doesn't really have chemistry with most of his receivers out there, who is a good quarterback, but he's not amazing. You have to keep in perspective, OU quarterbacks of the past times. And I think if you put realistic expectations on him, yeah, there were some passes that were just complete drops. There were some incompletions that maybe there was confusion from the receivers on what route they should be running. But at the same time, like, he threw some passes that, even if the receiver ran the wrong route, he had time to look and see that there was literally no one there. And he just still went robot mode and was like, oh, I must throw ball to this space in the air on this play. And there was no critical thinking there, even when he was not under pressure. I think that happened twice, but still, it's weird that it happened 2 times. And then there were a fair amount of passes, I think, that were behind and underthrown. I saw someone touching on deep balls, but again, you just have to know from him that you're not going to get a whole lot of power. You're going to get stuff that's being thrown behind and low, and you just have to kind of adapt to that. I'm saving play calling for later. I think that was the bigger issue, but I think Gabriel is fully developed, and I think he's good enough to win us a lot of games.
And I think, and I'm not trying to get into, maybe we do get into it. But the play calling didn't really allow him to get into rhythm. I felt like there were too many times where, and of course the drops didn't help, but there are too many times where we just kind of go with these boring little, boring runs. And then, the introduction of, Jackson Arnold at times in that dumb little belldozer package. I don't think that helped him out very much. It's really dumb because everyone knows what the hell's going to happen. Pretty much every single time Jackson Arnold trots out there, it just throws off the rhythm entirely. It didn't work. But overall, just the play calling didn't help him get in a rhythm. And I will say, we want to talk about the wide receivers a little bit. I wonder if he is a little limited in what he can do. I know some of it is, SMU is playing super soft coverage to prevent, big plays. We didn't see pretty much any long balls out of Gabriel. But, if you look at it, how much can Andrel Anthony and Jalil Farouk, be the big receivers? Because, you have the Stoopses, the Freemans, who can get you the small, yard type of plays, as well as backs who are pretty great receiving backs. But it just doesn't feel like we don't have a Mims. We don't have a home run ball type of guy. We don't have a big wide receiver type of guy, which, it was a bummer because I don't know. What do you think, Ty?
This gets into fringe Ty takes and conspiracies. My thinking is that if we had a big deep ball threat guy, it would actually put us in more trouble than it would help us, because I think we would try to use it too much when we just don't. And again, I'm not trying to do a bit, but we don't really have a quarterback who can consistently threaten people deep like that. So I think it maybe would hurt us if there was that temptation to try to make those plays here and there, when it is going to be something that is much more likely to result in a turnover if you have someone that, maybe has a little difficulty with the deep balls. And again, I think he's good. I'm not trying to dog on Dillon Gabriel. I think just the receiver room has got to pay attention. Someone's got to step up, because you can't have those plays where there's confusion about what route you need to run or something like that. You have to have those people who can make separation, who can make people miss. And I think one thing, and again, this bleeds over into play calling, but if you look at the receiving, Tawi Walker and Marcus Major are right up there They're really not far off Farouk, even when it comes to stats. Major, arguably more, because Major had 2 receiving touchdowns. One that obviously got taken back because of an egregious, lineman downfield that didn't help. That, I'm not saying, it was a BS penalty, but the lineman being downfield did not help us at all in that play.
Right.
And I'm addressing that because Marcus Major legitimately, on a receiving route for him as a running back, got 2 touchdown passes. He created open space, caught the pass, brought it into the end zone twice. One of those got taken back, but he did it twice. That did not occur with other receivers. And, that's good. We want to see people step up in the running back room, which we're about to get into. But yeah, the receivers, you could tell. I mean, Stoops had a very uncharacteristic drop that I think was not Gabriel's fault. But again, Stoops clearly was not 100% in this game. I guess he got targeted 3 times, 2 receptions, and then 1 really, really bad incompletion. And then Andrew Anthony, I think his first target, he also dropped, and it was a fairly decent pass, if I remember correctly. Obviously, we went right back to him, converted to a first down, and he had a really good game, scored a touchdown, and for this game, looked to be our firm WR1. So I don't know. I think my hope, and I touched on this in Gabriel, is that Gabriel and Andrew Anthony can really develop chemistry, because I feel like there's maybe more potential there than there is with Farouk. So I think we'll see him step up as our WR2, and then hopefully as Drake continues to heal, this running back or this receiver room can really form together. And although we're not going to present that super deep breakaway speed, I think we can have a pretty dangerous receiver room as the season develops.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Anthony is, that standard WR1 type of guy. He obviously got the ball a lot. They were looking for him a bit. That touchdown he had, I thought, was great. Farouk, good to see him get some burn after having 0 receptions last week. His touchdown was awesome, by the way. That just tough, hard nosed, great running. Love to see that out of Farouk. I thought he did wonderful. But at the same time, you have to be. I'm looking at this where if you look back to last week's show, we talked so much about Nick Anderson, Jaquez Petaway, and Jaden Gibson, like how, this is fun, this is fresh, it's working, and they completely vanished in this game. They didn't really register at all. And in Jaden Gibson's case, when we were talking about size, that's a guy who I think could be that type of guy. So it was a little bit of a bummer not to see them step up and really make an appearance, but that's just kind of how these games are. But
and we do need that depth as we sort of start to cap it off on the receivers. To use a basketball analogy, the receiver room is one of those rooms where you need those people, those come off the bench players. You need those people to come in for a few minutes here and there, or a few drives here and there, while your main guys, even in a close game, to get some reps in. I feel like that's a role that Farouk really could step into as he continues to develop. I just don't, not to dog on him, but this is his 3rd year at OU. This is his 2nd year. He had a lot of play time last year with Dylan Gabriel. So there shouldn't be those sort of timing issues and just lack of chemistry there. He should have been able to step up as a very, very solid, WR1 in this game when Stoops is not 100% healthy. And I just didn't see that in this, which is why I'm being a little more down on him than Andrew Anthony, who obviously this is his 1st year at OU. And, I'm going to give him a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. So yeah, when it comes to that receiver room, we want to see that depth like we saw last week. And like you said, Bobby, you were talking about anyone can do it. We can have that plug and play. We can have those people off the bench that might not be at the exact same level where our main guys are, but they're still out there. And if someone sleeps on them, they're going to get a touchdown or they're going to get a big play. Although we had some of those in this game, I just didn't feel like the threat was really present the entire time.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Okay, let's talk about someone who I thought was a real threat and who I thought was a very, very solid performer. That'd be Tawee Walker. That whole running back room was, look, Major had big plays. If you look at his stat line, not obviously flashy by any means, but Tawee Walker, oh my gosh, that guy had himself a game. 117 rushing yards on 21 carries, 5.6 yards per carry. And then through the passing game, he also added a little, 25 yards on 3 receptions. Not bad. Nice little, if we're talking about, we talk, I can't remember what show we talked about it on, but this is like, the fries you find at the bottom of your bag. That's the reception yards for Tawee Walker. I think that guy, I think this was probably one of the things play calling wise that worked, is the adjustment to run Tawee Walker more. Because I feel like there were times that they were putting Major in a little bit too much when it was clear that Walker had the hot hand. He was rolling great. Getting him back on the field more, grinding him out to 21 carries. He had himself a hell of a game. Didn't get in the end zone, but that is some really good production right there.
Yeah, here's what I think. Look, I can't hold back anymore. I understand SMU not necessarily a defensive powerhouse, but I think when it comes to the running back room in this game, it sure seemed to me like play calling was in fact the big issue, because what I saw in this game was really, 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 really good running back play from both Marcus Major and Tawee Walker when they were used in the situations and plays that they should be used in. Obviously, you're always going to have those plays where you're trying to reset yourself, closer to the center hash. You're trying to grind out, just yards up the middle. Like, you're always going to have those plays that just aren't going to result in big highlight reels. But I felt like what I saw out of this game was Tawee Walker really step up as an RB1 in a situation that was much more challenging offensively than last week. And I felt like I saw Marcus Major step up as a very, very solid situational guy who could keep the ball secure, at least for now. Again, not going to read into SMU and Arkansas State too much, but I saw two guys that really, really could fit their roles when they were employed correctly. You're not going to be able to do that all the time. But like you said, Bobby, there were a lot of moments where Walker was really, had a stride going, and then, maybe has some endurance issues. There's obviously a lot of stuff that we just don't see from the fans' point of view, but it did seem like there were some coaching decisions that just weren't correct. And it almost felt like, to me, it was just dumb luck when we just happened to employ the right guy in the right situation. And then we saw how well they could perform. So, who knows? That can maybe be a controversial take. Maybe I'm excusing the players, and trying to pin on someone else. But I really felt like my takeaway on the running back side was that we're actually pretty set when it comes to the running backs. We're just not using them correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right, because like you said, we have good. Major did have a solid performance in those moments. You're right. And, Gavin Sawchuk made a couple appearances, as well as, Javonte Barnes, and, they were fine. But, once you figure out what to do, when to run the right guys at the right time. Yeah, I'm not worried about their quality, perhaps, but it's more just, ride the hot hand, because there'll be times Tawee Walker probably isn't running as good as, a Javonte Barnes or Gavin Sawchuk or Marcus Major. Just roll with what works. So, you know what? Have we what else is there to talk about? I feel like we got the receivers, got the quarterback. I thought the line put up a solid performance, nothing too bad there. Just very, very standard stuff. Only 3 tackles for loss allowed, 1 sack. Not that's not bad. Any other points on the offense before we start handing out game balls?
Yeah, the longtime viewers and listeners will know that Jameson, who is out for work requirements right now, is generally our line expert. So we'll have more line analysis when he was back. But yeah, I don't think there was really anything to hit on majorly when it came to the line. We were able to establish a decent enough run. We had some good run plays like we talked about, and I didn't feel like Dylan Gabriel was all too pressured if you look at the game as a whole. Obviously, there were some drives here and there where SMU dialed up the right stuff. But yeah, I think the O-line performed where we would expect them realistically and where we would need them to perform at week 2, and continue to sharpen that blade, kind of like the defense. It might not be the dish that we're we're wanting to cook, but I think we found the ingredients and we're just letting them simmer a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta say, little note before we hand out game balls. Your guy Blake Smith caught a touchdown. Good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right as, yes, this is true. Right as Jameson was talking some sort of crap in the text, I forget what it was, but yeah, I was able to get him back shortly with, they told me that we would not be seeing tight end play very often. But we got another 1/4 of our touchdowns in this game were from the tight ends. So I don't know. Also on tight ends, first reception from Cal, which if you watched on TV, they were remarking, the announcers were remarking that he has not got a reception yet on the very play that he got a reception. So that was kind of funny coincidence.
Love that.
Like a reverse announcer's curse. I think it was like -1 yards, but got a reception.
He still got
it. Was either positive or -1. It was not, it was rather insignificant.
Yeah. It was 1. Yeah, it did not affect much, but good stuff. All right, let's give out game balls. I'll just go ahead and just rip off the Band-Aid. I got Tawee Walker for all of the reasons I said very, very recently. The guy was an absolute workhorse, and when things weren't going great in the offense, he was a shining, consistent back that really, once Lebby and the offense started putting him in, running him over and over again, like really utilizing him perfectly, that's what changed everything. He was able to grind down the SMU defense and really open things up for the OU offense as they figured things out in the fourth quarter. Who do you got, Ty?
Yeah, so this is not necessarily how the game balls work, but I'm thinking of my game ball as an investment game ball. I'm trying to get in early and invest while maybe not everyone is invested in this guy, and give him a vote of confidence and hope that he develops into what I think he can be. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of maybe controversial this game, but laid out my criteria. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Andrell Anthony. I feel like I could see him step up as a firm WR1 even later on in the season. I liked what I saw from him, especially, like we talked about, first target was a drop, got right back up, got a really good reception after that. And I felt like he was putting in the work all game. I felt like I saw glimpses of early CD before CD was a star. And I would come on the podcast and tell you guys, like, I think he's going to be great because I see him going all out on like random run plays. And all the other receivers are kind of jogging and he's out there blocking and he seems to always be going out. I felt like I saw a lot of hustle, a lot of just putting in the work from Andrell Anthony. I think that's going to pay off as the chemistry develops.
I like it. That's a good pick because Anthony was really, really solid. Showed up in moments that mattered. So I like that. All right, let's go ahead and talk about it. Jeff Lebby's play calling, obviously up and down, not great, but definitely the worst thing that happened after the ball game. And we don't like to dive into some of this stuff, but this is inextricably, we got to talk about it. After the game, Lebby, who is the son-in-law of Art Briles, brings him onto the field. They're photographed afterwards. Briles in attendance, with the Lebby family, wearing an OU shirt. And let's just say social media was furious, as I think a lot of people are warranted to be, because everything that we're not here to rehash everything that happened with Baylor. Lots documented on that. Everything that Briles was in charge of at Baylor was abhorrent. And I think we all agree that he's someone who shouldn't really be involved in the leadership of men at all. He's lost that right. Brent Venables said he hadn't heard about it, but they dealt with it. Lebby came back, kind of snapped back at reporters, saying that he's the grandfather of my sons and all this. And then Joe Castiglione said, he didn't know about it, extremely disappointed, and that it was a situation that he didn't see happening because of conversations before they hired Lebby back in December of 2021. So here's the thing, and I'm just ability talk here, but I get that he's related to you. I get that he's your father-in-law. That's fine. And yeah, I'd be mad. I'd be a little annoyed if he was wearing an OU shirt sitting in a suite. That'd be annoying. I don't like that. I don't like Art Briles anywhere around my program. It's disgusting. It's gross. It's whatever. There are times to have family meetups, but as a professional, as a representative of the University of Oklahoma, and as an employee that has agreed to not do this, you cannot do that. You cannot let Art Briles at all on that field. That is genuinely so frustrating and so upsetting for everyone that's an Oklahoma Sooner, either an alumnus, a former player, a fan, anyone who wears it is proud to be an OU, to be associated with OU. Art Briles is someone you do not want in your family, in your circle at all. And I get second chances. I get forgiveness. But at the end of the day, there are just some things you just can't allow. And it's not like he's being banned. I'm not supporting throwing him behind bars or anything, or like, he can't go to the games, can't buy an OU shirt, whatever. That's whatever. He has a right to do that. But the University of Oklahoma should not allow him anywhere on that field. Not at all. And I'm sorry, Jeff, but that's just a part of it. When you took this job, when you take any job, you got lucky that you aren't blackballed from the sport. So maybe just understand that, the grandfather of your kids, doesn't have the right to be on the field because of what he did, because he is Art Briles, because of everything that follows him around for the rest of his life. And he has the right to do a lot of things in life, but that is something that is an inherent right that he does not have. Ty, what are your thoughts on this garbage?
Yeah, the ultimate issue, I think, because I've seen opinions either way. There have been people that think it's not a big issue and it's being blown up and it shouldn't be. There's people that, believe it to be a pretty significant issue. And obviously there's a lot of people in between. I think there's two very important things really when I think about the situation. The first is, yes, he was a guest of Jeff Lebby's, but Jeff Lebby is an employee of the University of Oklahoma, and he was working, and it was for him a work event. By being a University of Oklahoma event and being invited by a University of Oklahoma employee as their guest, it is inherently an invitation by the university. You have to understand that it's not your decision, no matter who you are. And some people have gotten into Jeff Lebby's past, and there have been some other incidents unrelated even to the Baylor thing, where he's just felt like he's above the rules or can sort of interpret certain rules or policies or whatever as he sees fit. You have to understand that it's not about you. It's not about your decision, whether it's right or wrong, whether you think he should or shouldn't have been there. Ultimately, I don't think it was his decision to make. You're there in an official capacity and you're inviting guests on behalf of the university. It's not your decision to decide whether or not it's right or wrong. Obviously, you have to have that level of professionalism and ability to make decisions, to make the right decision. But ultimately, it's not you. You're representing Oklahoma, the university, the state, the program. No one was upset really this past day or so that he's related to Art Briles. Everyone's upset that he gave him an OU shirt and then invited him to the sidelines at an OU game. And then I think the second very telling thing is, we know because Lebby himself posted the evidence that Art Briles was there for the pregame as well. And then we've seen, photographs of him immediately after the game out there standing with Lebby and Dylan Gabriel while SMU players were still on the field in the immediate postgame. And then obviously we saw that first picture that came out that was later on in the postgame. And when Lebby was asked about it, he said that Art Briles only came on the field after the game and then corrected himself and said, well, after the game, which to me sounds like, if you're a little child, like a little child gets caught in a lie or doing something wrong and they know they can't get out of it. And they do that sort of admit to a lesser wrong thing and hope you don't look into it more. He was there the entire time. We know that. We have photographs of the whole thing. I just don't see, like, he knows he did something wrong. I think you can read into that by saying if he didn't think it was wrong, he wouldn't have felt the need to, just sort of quantify when he was there and then lie about it. So, yeah, I don't know what should or shouldn't happen. Obviously, people are aware of it. I think that there should be some sort of action, but it's in the hands of people who it's their job to take care of this stuff. Ultimately, no matter how you feel about it, I think it's made the university not look good in the public light, and that's not a good thing. And you have to make stands on principled things. Like, football cannot be held above the reputation of the university and the safety and comfort level of the students and the people actually affiliated to the school. If someone who has no affiliation to OU whatsoever, if their presence at games is going to make people uncomfortable or feel unsafe, shouldn't be there. Like, if it were up to me, right, no one associated with any other program would be invited on our, like, I would ban RG3 from OU, period, if I could, or anyone at TCU. Like, but you have to have a stand on principles.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, it just can't happen. And from what you hear, a lot of you have to imagine people aren't happy with it. Obviously, Castiglione isn't. Obviously, you would have to imagine there are some donors who are furious about this, and we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it's cause to. I think it itself isn't inherently cause to fire him or to relieve him of his duties. I don't think that quite is the case right now. But in terms of, is this the guy you want in your program? Somebody who has been known to be an Art Briles apologist, was behind a lot of the CAB hashtag Coach Art Briles shirts, and just doesn't get it overall what happened and what he did, and cannot separate that from his own family. I just don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And I'm not saying that the man can't have a relationship with his father-in-law, but don't bring him on the damn field.
I think
just boneheaded.
Yeah, I think there's one very important thing that transcends this. It goes into a lot of other issues in college football, but I have seen some people, bringing up the talking point, so to speak, that, oh, we should get rid of Jeff Lebby now because he did this and he makes bad play calls. And, I've seen some people saying, oh, he makes bad play calls, this is our excuse to get rid of him. Ultimately, what you can never do in this situation is say, or even, bring up the standard that this would be handled differently. Whatever the issue is, it cannot be handled any differently if someone is good at their job in football or bad at their job in football. I mean, ultimately, that was kind of the Art Briles issue in the first place, was these people are good at football. Let's hold them to a different standard. Let's not get them in trouble. And then it creates at Baylor. The discussion can't be he's bad at play calling, which I think he is. Therefore, we should try to get him on anything that we possibly can, because, again, the inverse of that is someone's good at football or good at play calling. Therefore, they should be above the rules. That just can't happen. That's kind of, full circle, the cause of this entire issue. But yeah, the talking point should not be, let's dog on him because he's bad. Like, those are two separate things.
Agreed. I certainly agree with that. But yeah, we'll obviously keep in touch with all of this as the situation progresses. But yeah, just a gnarly moment for the University of Oklahoma. Not great stuff. No matter how you cut it, it's certainly removes it puts a damper on some good vibes. So let's move on, because there is a football game this week, Ty, and I'm sure a lot of people out there will keep this Lebby thing ain't going to go away anytime soon. That's fine. We'll see how it goes. But let's talk about some football. And the Oklahoma Sooners are headed to Tulsa for the first time in 9 seasons. Basically a home game. This one's a sellout, and in a lot of ways, it's going to feel like a bit of a family reunion because they're facing the new head coach of the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, Kevin Wilson, who spent a long stint at OU. He was there from 2002 to 2010 and served several years as the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive mind in charge of that just electric 2008 Sam Bradford team. Some really great offensive work happened under Wilson. So exciting to see this again. A little bit of a coordinator battle because him and Brent obviously worked together during that time frame. So what are you thinking going into this game?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good game I love when the programs within the state play each other. I think it's really, really solid for OU. Again, obviously it's right down the road. These recruits have no problem visiting OU, but it's really solid to see us play in a city where I think we should do some more recruiting, especially when I think in the future, the choice between, an in-state school, the choice between OU, OSU, and let's throw Tulsa in there because of this week, is going to be three very different choices. I would always argue that OU would be a cut above Oklahoma State, but there was a time where, hey, I'm playing in Oklahoma, the state that I'm from. I am playing in the same conference. Is there a whole lot of difference? Maybe I can be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Now it's a completely different choice, between the in-state schools. So it's always really good to see us play. I think it helps Tulsa out, a little bit, get them on TV and everything else. So I think it's super exciting. I think it's really exciting. Obviously, tremendous OU fan base in Tulsa that gets to go to a game 20 minutes from their house and then go back home instead of that long turnpike ride or thinking about staying with a friend or a hotel or something. So, yeah, I think it's super, super awesome to go and play up in Tulsa every time we get a chance. And some people are saying it's going to be bad football, but I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a fun game for sure. Wilson is the type of guy who can dial up some offense to make things a little spicy, but just doesn't really have the horses right now. But overall, Tulsa is a program to me that is very important to the state. No, there isn't a outside of OU and Oklahoma State. There isn't that kind of lower level team outside of Tulsa. So them being a pretty solid base and bring in on a smaller degree, fans from all around that city, OU, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Kansas, and be like everybody's kind of second team. I think that would be truly cool if they could do that. But overall, not a lot of thoughts on the game itself. Tulsa's coming off of a pretty bad beatdown at Washington. So fresh off the heels of that. But before the game, we do have a thing to talk about. Sean Kingston is performing before the game. Concert at 1 p.m. If you do not know who he is, you're either way too young or a little old. But for people like our age, it makes a lot of sense. He sings such songs as "Fire Burnin'," "You're Too Beautiful." Don't look at the lyrics. That one didn't age well. And Eenie Meenie, not sure if Justin Bieber will make an appearance at this one. My bet would be probably no. Odds are low on that one. But Ty, what are your thoughts on Tulsa bringing up Sean Kingston for their pregame concert?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hilarious. It was one of those, like you said, he had such a moment of just very specific pop culture music for like 2 years when you and I were in, it must have been early middle school. So yeah. It's if you weren't around that age, like you said, you're either too young or too old. I think most everyone our age kind of forgot it was like Sean Kingston. Is that I mistook him for another artist and then remembered. I don't know. I think it's fun, right? Like overall, I love the way that college football is going because this is a weird attempt at, bringing some sort of artist up. But this is sort of becoming more of a norm in college football. And I think that's good for the fans. I think it's good for the sport to lean into that entertainment product a little bit. You can never, is it weird? Is it not weird? Is it just funny? I don't think it makes anything worse in any way. I think, the more options that fans can have pre-game, I think if you're incentivizing more people to show up, maybe show up to some tailgates, do some tailgating, go to a little concert or whatever, increasing the fan experience, just increasing the amount of entertainment, I think only helps. It only helps draw people to the games. And I really think that's the positive side of the new norm of college football is schools are really getting incentivized to really push fan engagement and entertainment. There's been an arms rush for forever in locker rooms and recruiting. Obviously, that's getting worse. There's always been, a little bit of an arms rush when it comes to, stadiums and stuff like that. But the general fan experience really hasn't changed much in a long, long time. And I think moving to a norm where it's the norm to have, some sort of concert or pregame entertainment inside the stadium before the event, I think that's a good thing. And it'll be interesting to see as things develop. I think another school this next week also has someone like completely random. Like I think someone has like Randy Orton, like the WWE star, is just coming and I don't know. I assume he's not singing, he's doing something. I may have just created that in my head, but someone else has a really weird pregame this next week as well. Just off the top of my head. But yeah, I think it's very interesting.
I pressed the wrong button on my headphone and Freebird started playing. I'm really sorry. I kid you not. I have no idea how. You can see the look on my face. I swear. But no, bringing Randy Orton on just to be Randy Orton. That's kind of hilarious.
I think I made that up. I don't think it's Randy Orton, but it was someone like that. It's
still funny. I'm gonna stick with it because that sounds incredible and also like something that I don't know, like Miami of Ohio would do. But no, I think it's all about creating a positive experience for a lot of fans. But I think specifically that Venn diagram of OU fans that live in Tulsa that are like, hey, this Tulsa game is really fun. I should go to more of these. And then you go to more of them, make that experience cool, make it worthwhile. Yeah. And, hopefully in the future, Tulsa going to be your second team. So that'd be pretty cool. Now, I do want to kind of end this little Tulsa preview out with one thing. So Ty, you've spent some time in the city of Tulsa, as we all know. And, as somebody who kind of just hasn't gone down there for a lot of things, I want to know
the lake is a little Tulsa. Bit more. Grand Lake is Tulsa.
Grand Lake isn't Tulsa. You go by it. I just know the casino and that one little corner where there's a really good Quick Trip and a Waffle House across from it, and also an Arby's. I feel like there are a lot of Arby's in Tulsa, and I don't know why. I could be wrong on that, but
no, that could be true. The only place I've ever had Arby's is Tulsa.
Checks out. Oh, huh. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your favorite things in Tulsa, your just thoughts on the city as a whole, for Sooner fans making their trip up to T-Town.
I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of people listening to this just from Tulsa, so I don't know if I'm the right spokesperson. Fair. I think there's good food. It's definitely different than Oklahoma City. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's a good drive. I always enjoy the drive. It's very easy, obviously coming from Oklahoma City or Norman, but yeah, get out, enjoy the city. If you're up there, there's nothing wrong that you can do. There's a neat little downtown, lots of good food for sure, and plenty of places to stay. I suppose the casino up there is really cool. Like you mentioned, it's a little bit nicer than Riverwind, just a little bit, and there's a Margaritaville up there, so you go up to the casino and get a margarita in memory of Jimmy.
Yeah, you can pay your respects, so that's never not a positive, but yeah, plenty of cool bars, restaurants. I know American Solera is a massive one up there as well. They got a cool little area there with a couple breweries. If you're into the whole craft beer scene, yeah, plenty of cool stuff. So go ahead and enjoy Tulsa. I know I will. I'm super excited about it, and excited for Sean Kingston, to say the least. I actually mildly excited for Sean Kingston. I think it's more of an ironic excitement. Once I get there, I'm going to be like, I don't know any of this music outside. Just play Eeny Meeny or one of the 3 songs I know, and let's get on with the day. But I don't know. The band's probably been making music for the past 15 years. I don't care about that catalog. I want to see the memes.
I was going to say this is both a joke and not a joke, not to dog on other creators. Bobby, I know you're going to think this is hilarious. Hopefully someone listening will get the joke too, but I was thinking about Sean Kingston, and I just had this thought that somewhere out there must be like someone who is like both a Tulsa and OU grad. Like maybe they went to Tulsa for undergrad and then OU for grad school. And then they're also just a massive Sean Kingston fan. And they're just absolutely just ecstatic at the thought of both of their favorite schools playing. And then they're also being a Sean Kingston concert. And I can't help but to think that maybe that's RJ Young.
I know 2 of the 3 things are true. I'm not sure about the third thing. I don't know RJ Young enough to know the third, but I know he did.
I like to think he's excited either way.
Yeah.
We'll investigate. We'll investigate.
I don't know if we want to investigate. I don't know if I want to get in with that, but yeah, no, I'm sure he definitely likes both of those schools. Attended Tulsa, was a cheerleader there, and then obviously wrote about OU until he kind of fell off the face of the earth / found Ohio State Twitter. Anyways, that's all we got for Tulsa though. Looking forward to the game. Looking forward to the weekend. I'm gonna be up there. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing the city. And look, if you're from Tulsa and you're watching on YouTube, put a couple comments in here. If other OU fans go see this, maybe they can take some of your suggestions and go do cool things in T-Town. So yeah, I don't know. But Ty, any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
No, hopefully we look improved and get a good performance this week.
Absolutely. Just keep building, keep growing. So hoping for a 3-0 type of performance from OU out of this. So, all right, for me and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We will see you coming up this Wednesday when we take on the weekend spread. Interesting week last week. A lot of good stuff happened. And this week, the slate, not great. We're going to be upfront on that one. Not as great as last week. We got a little spoiled, but we're still going to have fun. Still going to be a great show. So make sure to tune in on Wednesday, 7:30 as well. And yeah, just keep it tuned with the Schooner Pod. We'll keep pumping out that content and it'll be a good time. So anyways, y'all have a great rest of your week and Boomer Sooner, everybody.